Take a look at shares of Qualcomm. This morning, the stock is down. Of course, like so many others, it is down roughly 32 or so percent over the last 3 months, but it is still up about 5% over the last year. Joining us now is the company's chairman and CEO, Steve Mollenkopf, who has joined us many times, but this is, I'm sure, somewhat unique. Steve, always good to hear from you, always good to have you. I want to start on the business itself and then talk more broadly about 5G. What are you seeing from your customer base right now? What are your expectations? You only recently raised your dividend 5%. I guess, do you regret having done that?
No, I think we're in a strong position from a cash perspective, and clearly a strong balance sheet, and I think very fortunate to have that going into an event like this. But in terms of what we're seeing from our customer base, you have to think about it from the perspective of where they are. We have a lot of Asian-based handset OEMs. Of course, we sell a lot into the China market, and so what you see a little bit is really a recovery with respect to the coronavirus and the impact of it. So, for example, you saw if you're just looking at activations of cell phones, for example, in China in week 5, so the end of January, you saw a big dip. That actually recovered by week 10, which is really the beginning of March, and so. They obviously had a very fast reaction to the virus, but it was very good to see that the demand and the activations, which are essentially people buying cell phones and turning them on, has returned. So it's really turned back to the same level that you had a year ago. Clearly, a very difficult time in February, but good to see that returning. In terms of what our customers are doing, their supply chains are back to 70–80%. They continue to prioritize, I think, technologies that I think are good for Qualcomm, meaning that they're taking their capacity and allocating it to new phones using 5G, and they're trying to figure out how to take advantage of it. I think everyone's trying to determine what the impact of the to the U.S. and the European consumer. But in terms of things that we can control and the impact in China, you've got a little bit of a recovery, at least in terms of what we're seeing relative to what we saw in February.
Right. Well, Steve, I've known you for many years. You're an engineer. You have a very ordered mind, think about things in a sort of a linear fashion. How do you view what's going on here in the U.S. when you look at the virus, when you look at what you're seeing in terms of shutdowns in the U.S. economy? How are you thinking about Qualcomm, its position, and when, in fact, we're sort of going to get, to your point on China, on the other side of this?
Well, I would say, you have to think about the things you can control and the things you can't control. As a company, what we can control is, can we take care of our employees, and can we make sure that the business continuity is there? And I think we've done a good job at doing that. In an environment, I think it's very difficult to anticipate. So, for example, we have the majority of our development teams are still making progress, but they're making progress from home. A lot of that has to do with some planning that we did to be able to work remotely. We still have people in the labs that have to be in the labs, essential personnel, but a very small percentage. But we're working from home, and that's working. We'll continue to work on 5G. We don't think it will impact the 5G schedules that we're working on, which is very good, and I think a testament to the good planning. In terms of the consumer and what the impact will be to our business, the only thing we can really think about is make sure that we have a strong balance sheet and take care of anything that we can take care of, which we will be able to do. I will tell you, we continue to hire. We continue to add engineering talent because we're excited about the opportunity that's coming with 5G. And we have to make sure that we're prepared to come out of this dip. How long it's going to take and all of that, I think it's very difficult for us to add anything to that debate, but we have to make sure that we're prepared to take advantage of what we think will be a good environment after we emerge from this period.
Hey, Steve, Jim Cramer, always good to see you.
Yes, good to see you, Jim.
Your company's known as being... I'm going to switch directions here. David's got the 5G covered, so, and what you guys are doing in the future. But your company's known as being perhaps the best corporate citizen in America when it comes to what you do for a city. How do you step up here? How do you help public health workers? I mean, they seem to be the most exposed right now. They're the ones that are working overtime. We talk about the workers in aerospace and obviously worried about small business. But the ones I'm most worried about are the people who are actually in the hospitals right now for the 10-time explosion we're going to have. What can corporate America do? And I know everyone looks to you because you seem to have thought about everything when it comes to trying to help the town.
Well, I think we don't have any special answers. I think we feel fortunate to have the opportunity to help out when we can help out. We actually helped out in China to a small degree, and I think everyone's trying to figure out how they can do the best work. And you're right. It's the healthcare workers. It's people that have that really don't have the strong positions that you might have if you're employed in a big corporation like Qualcomm or others that you have on here every day. And I think everyone from the business community is trying to figure out how to help people. We unfortunately don't have the ability to manufacture some of the medical equipment and supplies that they so desperately need. But I think providing direct financial help to people in the communities we work and live in is something that Qualcomm will be doing. We're evaluating that right now. We're also trying to figure out, are there things that we can do to encourage people or make their life easier in terms of working from home or educating from home, which is a new thing that's happening now. A lot of people don't have access to broadband, and they need to have some access through cellular. So we're trying to make sure that we can encourage people to do that. I know some of the carriers are doing the same thing. But we, like a lot of other businesses, will try to figure out the best way that we can help. But it's an enormous problem, as you know, to try to support people.
Hey, Steve, it's heartening to listen to your data on cell phone activation and supply chains out of Asia. How do you calm concerns among people who believe that other metrics coming out of Asia and specifically China are simply not reliable?
Well, I think in terms of order flow and what's happening to our supply chain, there's a lot. We know what's going on there. Obviously, our employees are back to work in terms of factory employees. Our production that we're seeing still remains. The real question, of course, is what happens with the consumer in the West. I mean, I always use the analogy that I think the sun has come up in China with respect to the restoration of how they return to kind of a normal state, and we'll see what happens as people get through preparations and dealing with what I think is still a ramping issue elsewhere in the world. Now, for us, you have to put that into what can we do and what can we not influence. And for us, the best thing is make sure that our schedules are on track to the degree we can, and make sure we take care of our people. And I think every company is trying to figure out how to do the same thing.
Yeah, they certainly are, Steve. Your stock price has turned around since you started speaking with us, I would assume, on those positive comments you said about the Chinese market. But let me come back to what your expectations then are. It seems like a lifetime ago, on February 5th, I think, when you reported numbers, but you were talking about 5G mobile handsets in 2020 of between 175 million and 225 million. Do you still feel like when this year ends, that's the number you're going to be between?
I think it's too early to tell. I think everyone's trying to process what is the shape of the recovery? How long is it going to exist? I mean, clearly there's a hole in the China market in February, which has filled back in, as I described. But I think it's too early to tell as to what's going on with the consumer, in the Western areas. Now, I will tell you, tremendous amount of activity with the carriers, with the handset OEMs in terms of launching devices. We launched a device with LG in the United States last year. We did that remotely, if you can believe it, meaning that we had people working from home, helping to support those launches around the world. Docomo still announced their 5G launches with 7 different handsets, I think 2 days ago. We're obviously working very hard to make sure that some of the larger handset manufacturers that have key launches, they're going to be successful. So we're going to do what we can do, and we'll see what happens with the market. I will tell you, we are thinking and still very, very optimistic that the long-term drivers of why we're so excited about the business remain intact. And in fact, I think the biggest issue you have to be prepared for is when this thing snaps back, it's going to snap back hard, and make sure that you're in a position to take advantage of it. And so we're trying to do the best job we can to make sure we're prepared, but also be a good corporate citizen in the meantime, and be a good employer and a good member of the communities that we're in. And I think our teams are helping us do a good job there, hopefully.
Steve's funny. I got a lightning round call yesterday on Qualcomm, and I looked at the dividend. I looked at where your stock was. I forgot that it had fallen so much. I just buy because you're at the forefront of 5G. But let me ask you a question about national security. China's come out of this. I mean, they're opening Starbucks in Wuhan. Are we in danger of really falling behind in 5G just because of where we are as a nation right now and what we're doing with our issues involving COVID-19?
Well, I would tell you we have probably as good a lens into that as any company, just given what we're doing. And I can tell you that we are not falling behind in our 5G development due to some great work in terms of quick planning. Just to give you a sense for what's going on, we have the ability to remotely log into all of the chips that we do around the world. We've had, I think, on Monday, which was the first day of our, I would say, worldwide work from home, we had 35,000 VPN connections with 37,000 total employees. So tremendous amount of work continues to go. We had 2 million Microsoft Teams messages just to, that's people debugging code and continuing to do forward. So I think in terms of our ability to remain a leader in 5G and keep our schedules and do it, we're, based on what I see at Qualcomm, we're going to continue to be in a strong position. And we feel good about that. Some of that is the way in which we work, but also, we're excited about the opportunity and we'll continue to work on it. So I wouldn't call that a big concern. I think the biggest concern is how do we take care of some of the 70% of the economy that's trying to figure out how to deal with the virus and probably not in as strong a position as we feel like we can be in.
Yeah. Well, Steve, it is interesting to note, obviously, that your stock price has reacted very positively since you began speaking. I think you're up roughly 10%. Rare to see, but yeah. Qualcomm shares up over 6%. Let me end, though, on share buybacks, because it may in the future become a nasty word and one that is not going to be embraced by people in your position. You undertook one years ago for any number of reasons. You've also had activists who've come at you. You still have a decent amount left on your authorized buyback. Do you suspend that buyback simply out of an abundance of caution right now?
Well, if you just to recall, we had a very large buyback over the last year, and of course we thought that it was at a time when the stock was undervalued, and I think what happened was that ultimately became true. We're obviously in an unusual situation right now. Today, we're looking at the dividend in terms of being something that we know we can handle, at least in the current environment. And we have a strong, as you know, we have a strong balance sheet and an investment grade rating. And I think, for us, it's maintain your liquidity, make sure that you can continue to be strong in 5G. And, if we see an opportunity to buy stock at the right time, we will. But our focus right now is making sure that our 5G programs are on track and that we continue to maintain a strong balance sheet. And, we're in a fortunate position to be able to do that.
Yeah. Well, Steve, always appreciate your willingness to come on with us. Steve Mollenkopf is the CEO of Qualcomm.